Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so here we have the problem on similarity. And we know that our scale factor is 1/2, right? We also know that the new shape is A and the original shape is B. And this makes sense because since our scale factor is less than 1, our shape should be getting smaller. So here's the original, and it becomes this, which is considerably smaller. Okay, so to figure out the value of x, we're going to use our formula, which is the original times the scale factor equals the new, right? So I know that the original is x minus 5, so let me write x minus 5 times the scale factor, which is 1/2, and that's going to equal the new, which is 5, right? Because that's the new side right here, 5. Okay. So now my job is to multiply x minus 5 times 1/2. It'd probably be easier to see it as 1/2 times x minus 5. So now what I'm doing is I'm multiplying 1/2 times x, but I'm also multiplying 1/2 times negative 5. So let's see, we have 1/2 times x, that's going to give us 1/2 x. And then 1/2 times negative 5 is going to be, well, what's half of 5, right? Half of 5 is 2.5 or 2.5. So this is going to be 1/2 times negative 5 would be negative 2.5. I could also write it as negative 5/2, right? Equals 5. Okay, so now what I want is I want that 1/2 x to be by itself, right? I want to isolate the variable. Now this becomes sort of a simple equation, except for the fact that we see fractions, right? So we have 1/2 x minus 5/2. I want 1/2 x to be by itself, so I'm going to create a zero pair here. So I'm going to add 5/2 here, right? So plus 5/2. And then on the other side, I'm also going to write plus 5/2. Although I know that 5/2 is 2.5, so I can actually write plus 2.5. These two are exactly the same, right? And that's going to give me a brand new equation. These are going to cancel out. These are going to zero out. So those are gone. And now what I'm going to have is 1/2 x equals, well, 5 times 2.5, which is 7.5. But I still haven't figured out what 1x is. I know what 1/2 x is, but I know what I'm supposed to do here. I'm supposed to divide each side by the coefficient. The coefficient of x right now is 1/2, so I divide each side by 1/2. And I know that looking at this, this looks a little funky. I mean, this guy right here, since I have 1/2 over 1/2, and we know that a number over the same number is a giant 1, that one's pretty easy, right? So I could just go giant 1 over here. And this simply becomes just 1x, right? So I know now that my equation is so far 1x equals, right? Well, it's going to equal whatever this is, 7.5 over 1/2, otherwise known as 7.5 divided by 1/2. So I can rewrite this, right? I can rewrite 7.5 over 1/2, oops, like this. 7.5 divided by 1/2. And by now you should know that when we're dividing by fractions, right, this is going to be 7.5 over 1. So we have a fraction divided by a fraction. This turns into 7.5 over 1, that doesn't change, times, we turn it into a multiplication problem, and then we're going to use the reciprocal of 1/2, which is 2 over 1. And that's equal to, let's see, 7.5 times 2, that's 15. 1 times 1 is 1. So we get 15 over 1, which is essentially 15. So now I know that 1x equals 15, or that x, let's try that again, equals 15. And there is my solution. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope this helped. See you on the next video.